Hi, I want to do a final review on The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. I recently talked about this book on my channel. I believe the video is titled, So I Started Reading The Spanish Love Deception. And that review is relatively spoiler free. So if you don't want to be spoiled at all or very, very minimally, I would say check out that video, and it gives my general thoughts about it, and it doesn't get into detail. In this review, I think I'm going to get into a little bit more detail because unfortunately I had some criticisms about it, but I still think it's a strong read, but I will go into more specifics as this review goes on. So let's get into it. So as far as a brief synopsis for The Spanish Love Deception, it is essentially a office romance, or it starts off as an office romance between the two main characters, which would be Lena or Catalina and Aaron. So they work in an office. I think it's a tech company. The company name is InTech, and they are under the same group. There's multiple groups within InTech, and I think Lena is one of the leaders of InTech, and Aaron is a fellow colleague, and they have that typical adversarial type relationship that you'll see in a lot of enemies to lovers romance. This one is categorized as enemies to lovers, but it also takes upon a fake dating trope. A lot of people have made a lot of comparisons with this novel to The Hating Game. I don't think it's The Hating Game level, and I know The Hating Game itself is really polarizing. Either you love it or you hate it. I really don't see a lot of people that are in between with that book, but I'm in the camp that absolutely loved it for what it does. I feel like it was full of a lot of snappy banter, and I was engaged pretty much from the first page to the final page. The Spanish Love Deception, to me, even with the comparisons to The Hating Game, I think it has a lot more similarities to The Unhoneymooners from Christina Lauren. The Unhoneymooners, to me, is really reminiscent of this particular novel, and I've seen a couple of people make that comparison as well, and I think that's a lot more adapt. So if you love The Unhoneymooners, you probably will get a real kick out of this. I unfortunately was not the biggest fan of The Unhoneymooners, and it was because there was a certain percentage that I did not like in the book. So maybe the first 50% or so I really enjoyed, and then getting later into the novel, I feel like it got bogged down by a lot of family drama, and it's interesting that this book's trajectory is kind of similar in that. In any case, office romance, Lena and Aaron, they have the adversarial type relationship, and Lena is one of the very few women in her team, so she is tasked with a lot of the work that they deem for women, like she should be planning events and things of that nature, and they don't really take her seriously as a contributing member. And Erin, in her perception, is one of those office members that kind of looks down on her, thinks she's kind of silly and boisterous, and doesn't really take her role seriously. That's in his opinion. And because of that, she has a really low opinion of him. But you know, there's obviously drops of hints here and there that the two of them are attracted to one another. And one of her friends in the office, I believe her name is Rosie, she makes allusions to that you know, you guys just need to kiss and get over with it. So I don't know how it comes to be that she decides Aaron her absolutely only option, but her sister has a wedding, and most of her immediate family is in Spain, and she has this really turbulent past relationship with a man by the name of Daniel, and he, coincidentally enough, is going to be in the wedding party for her sister's wedding, and her husband to be is actually the brother of Daniel. And Lena is already dreading it, but of course she has to go. And she absolutely refuses to go without a date because she's just learned that Daniel got engaged. So she knows that she's going to hear she's going to hear nothing but a bunch of catty remarks about it. And her family is really nosy and into her business. And the way that the relationship left off between Lena and Daniel was really nasty. And it caused quite a ripple and a scandal in her town. So all else fails, she just does not really want to go. But because she loves her sister and wants to support her, she takes it upon herself to figure out how she's going to get a date, because she's been single for quite a while, because this relationship that she had with Daniel pretty much scarred her, and it's further revealed why it was so scarring to her, and it makes a lot of sense. But in any case, super scarring. She has to find a date. For whatever reason, Aaron is the only viable option. It actually takes a really long time before Aaron and Lena decide to go together for this wedding in Spain. And it's not until maybe about 50% into the novel where they come to the collective decision that they'll go together. And another bit of time passes before the book actually takes place in Spain. So there is a lot of unresolved sexual tension, but as far as like the nitty gritty and, the steamy scenes, it isn't until very late in the novel, which I'm actually okay with. I'm okay with slow burn as long as it's done well. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of stuff that was layered into the book. Like there's familiar problems on Daniel's side as well. He has a sick father, and this is trigger warning. He has cancer, and it's not alluded to until very late in the novel, and then it's kind of resolved towards the end. And it's kind of weird because adding that kind of layer, there's hints that are dropped, but to me a lot of that is left to like the last act, which kind of takes you out of the flow of the romance. And I'm not saying that romance novels can't have depth. Actually, a lot of romance novels can have quite a bit of depth and can touch upon a lot of different intersecting topics and still come away with a really well-crafted romance. And I'm not dissing this novel. I actually think it's worth the time because a good 80% of it I loved. In my first video where I talked about this book, I said it would have to implode for me to give it a bad review because I was enjoying it so much. But literally after the 80% mark in the book and after all the steamy, smutty scenes, it kind of grinds to a halt, and there's like several different barriers that keep them from being together. One of it being that Daniel's dad gets progressively more sick with his prognosis. Two, there's a major conflict within the workplace where Daniel actually gets a promotion and would technically then become Lena's boss, and one of her coworkers makes a lot of sexist comments towards her. And there was a lot of focus on that in the beginning of the novel. I kind of wish that was put into the focus as one of the main conflicts and how they would resolve it, because there is that discussion of power dynamics where Aaron would technically be Lena's boss, and a lot of the scandal and controversy that Lena was running away from Spain with her fated past relationship with Daniel was that Daniel was a teacher or professor in university, and Lena was a 19-year-old student. And once the relationship came to light, a lot of people started slut-shaming Lena, and a lot of disparaging comments, and a lot of her intelligence came into question, and a lot of her grades and her academic achievements came into question because of the relationship. And because of that, Lena, rightfully so, had a lot of reservations about being in a relationship with Aaron, and that kind of comes to head. And it's the way it's resolved, it's very much, it was like swept under the rug, and I kind of wish that the author kind of focused on that, because I actually thought that would have been really interesting to see how that played out and how their relationship was able to survive that and thrive. So overall, I think it's a really strong debut from Elena. I definitely would be interested in picking up another book of hers, and I'm really excited to see where her career goes. But I gotta be honest, the last 20% of the book, I kind of felt less passionate about it. Up to the 80% mark, I was thinking this was going to be like my second favorite contemporary rom-com, right underneath The Hating Game, because I still think that that one really is top tier for me. Whether you love it or hate it or not, I think it was really well done. It had really amazing chemistry. And not for anything, I was engaged from the first page to last page. Even with The Dark Night of the Soul, the last act, the conflict, all of that. I love that book and I still reread it. So I don't know what to tell you. Like, I enjoy it, and I have yet to read another romantic comedy in recent memory, anyways. I'm not talking about classics, but in recent memory that kind of is on the same level as Hating Game. A lot of romantic comedies unfairly get compared to that book, and a lot of them fall short. I think The Spanish Love Deception is really good on its own. I think it's a really strong debut. And as I said, I'm really excited to see future work from Elena, but I have to be honest, the ending kind of disappointed me, so that kind of knocked it down a couple of pegs. I still think I would give it, if I'm rating on Goodreads, like a 3.5 to 4 star. So really solid. And love to the enemies to lovers trope is really hard to tackle down, and I've written my own book, and I even found a hard time in really capturing that and keeping that tension from the first act to the final act. I think once you actually get to the romance and show how the two characters come together, that part's the easier part, but it's to make it believable that the two characters genuinely dislike each other and how they conflict, how they resolve conflicts and generally get a rapport to the point where you actually believe that they want to be together. That's always kind of tricky. And the final conflict before the resolution, to me, is always the hardest part for the writer to get through and for me to be fully in sync with it. And I find with a lot of the romance novels I've read as of late, as far as enemies to lovers, it just doesn't land. But I really like The Spanish Love Deception. I think it's worth the read. It just, unfortunately for me, the ending kind of fell apart for me personally, but I still think it's a strong read, and I think anyone who wants a fast romance to consume, this is a good book. And not to say that it's a short book. I think it clocks in under 500 pages, and I do think that it could have been skimmed, and there's a lot of stuff that could have been kind of rejigged. I don't know about Daniel's conflict with his dad. I probably, I don't know. I think it could have been trimmed down a bit, and there could have been a little bit more as far as the workplace dynamic. I thought that was a really interesting conflict in itself, and interesting commentary as far as sexism in the workplace, especially when you're in an industry that's male dominated. I thought that was an interesting angle, which I wish was expanded on more. But in any case, it was a good book, and that's my feelings. So that is the end of the review. You have a good day. See you in the next video. Peace.